In this video, we are going to analyze the poem The City Planners. This poem begins with the verses, "Cruising these residential Sunday streets in dry August sunlight." This is meant to create a calming and relaxing background to use it as a foundation to address the difference in atmosphere more starkly so that the reader can feel a bigger contrast between the two. Now you must note the time frame. For Christians, Sunday is considered to be a holiday, also a day where you spend time with your loved ones. Both these notions inspire a sense of happiness and a slow, relaxed feeling which is free of any worries or stresses of work. On the other hand, sunlight is usually a symbol of warmth and happiness. The next verse is, "What offends us is the sanities." This line can easily serve as the turning point of the poem, which suggests that it is not really the positive poem that we actually hope it to be. Over here, the poet is using the literary device juxtaposition. It seems that the poet finds sanity to be an issue. Now it is strange for everyone to be completely sane. Everyone in the city is complying by the rules and regulations and limiting self-expression. This also serves as a sarcastic remark, because how can something sane be offensive? Therefore, by the word sanity, she is trying to suggest that when everyone is limiting their self-expression, they are not actually sane. Rather, they are insane. In that scenario, they must be offended by the fact that society should tell them who they are. Can't everyone be different? Now we must note the colon in the end of the word sanity. This foreshadows the fact that the poet is about to list a bunch of aspects that she finds completely sane or rather insane about the city. The next verse is, "The houses in the pedantic rows, the planted sanitary trees, assert levelness of surface like a rebuke to the dent in our car door." Pedantic means something that is excessively concerned with minor details. So that would suggest that everything is organized in terribly boring and practical lines. It is clear that there is no room for creativity. This creates a sense of imagery about the houses being in completely straight rows. This reflects the lifestyles of the people. Because the houses are completely the same, the lifestyle of the people must be constant too, creating the sense that the city is actually a very boring place to live in, where everything is completely robotic. This creates the notion or idea of conformity and consistency. The only indication of life that could be interesting is the trees, but they are described as sanitary, as if all the interesting, free and natural growing shapes have been removed from them. How is that even possible? How can a tree be sanitary? Above all, sanitary means completely clean, whereas the trees require filth to grow. They require dirt and soil to grow. So how can a tree be sanitary? This remark addresses the irony behind the ideologies of builders and city planners, who want to suck the creativity and nature out of everything and make it completely straight and organized and robotic. This demonstrates the hold of development over nature. Nature is being oppressed to grow in a peculiar way, just for the sake of decoration in the city. This, in a way, is a sense of mockery of nature, as it is always free and uncontrolled. Therefore, the poet is putting urbanization and development in a bad light. The next part of the verse is, "like a rebuke to the dent in our car door." Now this once again addresses the fact that everything is so perfect that being normal is considered wrong. Everything is so level and straight that having a dent in car, which is considered normal for car owners, is considered wrong. What is the impression that is being created over here? The impression is that everything is owned by someone else and that you have no power even in your own house. This induces the feeling of suppression. The next verse is, "No shouting here, or shatter of glass, nothing more abrupt than the rational whine of a power mower, cutting a straight swath in the discouraged grass." Now we must notice that the line here sounds like an imperative rather than a description of rules and regulations that we find in such urban neighborhoods, and such incidents are usually done by children in their childhood. The impression created over here with this stresses the lifestyle of urban areas and how it has put a stop to all those little events which make up one's childhood. The next part of the verse is the rational whine of a power mower. Now, how can a sound be rational? This implies a sense of control over the things which could not be controlled, like nature. Moreover, it also implies that development has put control over sound as well, to make it completely logical and precise. The next part is cutting a straight swath in the discouraged grass. Discourage is used as an adjective to describe grass, to put nature in a pitiful position, as if development has put a leash on the nature. Again, the idea created over here is the power of these developers over nature and the people, at least the ones who are creative enough to differ with the planners. The next verse is, "But though the driveways neatly sidestep hysteria." Sidestep means to avoid something by stepping sideways, and hysteria means something that is exaggerated or uncontrollable emotion, or some thought of uncontrollable excitement. The word "but" over here is signaling to the reader that even though she has described the world this way, everything might not fit the same perfect description. All might not fit what the planners are planning to do. The slant from the roof mathematically calculated so that it is effective as possible. The next phrase is "certain things," and there is a colon, and after that certain things are listed, which are the smell of spilled oil, a faint sickness lingering in the garages, a splash of paint on brick surprising as a bruise, a plastic hose poised in a vicious coil, even the too fixed stare of the white windows. After the colon, the other side of the situation comes through. Although everything seems perfectly constructed, there are a few details that signal to the speaker that humanity cannot be so easily contained or trained. Plastic and poised is an alliteration. These words are used to describe the coiled hose sitting outside a house. This gives the image of a snake poised to strike, as if it at any time everything in the city will break as we cross the threshold from sane to completely insane. Even the too fixed stare of the wide windows. This is a personification to create the sense of insanity, as insane people often give a very fixed stare at nothingness, like the house before doing something completely crazy. The next verse is, "Give momentary access to the landscape behind or under the future cracks in the plaster." It is in this stanza that the poet starts to make a prediction of what is going to happen when we become too arrogant to defy the rules of nature. The first line of third stanza picks it up where the previous enjambed line left it off, describing how the windows give the speaker a brief insight to what's actually going on beneath the surface. Poet knows that the perfect facade the city planners have created is not going to last long. The landscape behind or under the future cracks in the plaster. Poet is expressing her ideas about how the old will be replaced with the new as the cracks in the buildings begin to show up. In the next verse, when the houses capsized will slide obliquely into the clay seas, gradual as glaciers that right now nobody notices. The metaphor used for the house as a ship, as if a crack in the building would send water rushing into the ship. The clay sea represents the rubble that is rarely recycled and how all buildings will ultimately end up in it. The fact that it is gradual illustrates the fact that we won't even notice it. She is implying that the nature will come back to strike and destroy the area. Ultimately, you can't control the nature as perfection defies nature. The next verse is, That is where the city planners with the insane faces of political conspirators are scattered over unsurveyed territories. This is the part where she names and shames the one who is it to be blamed, the city planners. Insane is used to describe the faces of political conspirators. This can exemplify their constant mood as they try very hard to alter the course of nature and try to maintain it. The phrase political conspirators is used to put the politicians in a bad light as they are manipulating the urban area for their own gain rather than for the benefit of many. It indicates a form of criticism over the controlling nature of these people, forcing others to live in a particular manner and conform, which would only create chaos in future. The word unsurveyed is a colloquial term rather than a real English term, emphasizing on her form of rebellion against these city planners. The phrase are scattered over unsurveyed territories could be a description of them looking about for business ideas they can go into. The phrase concealed from each other can be an indicator for the fact that they are in economic competition with each other on the market, further exemplifying that they only care for themselves and not for others' benefit. The word blizzard, which means a storm, could represent their madness and how they will fail by trying to reach ultimate perfection and full conformity. This brings us to the next stanza, which is guessing directions. They sketch transitory lines rigid as wooden borders on a wall in the white vanishing air. The phrase guessing directions can represent the business ventures that the politicians and the city planners take, as if they are guessing directions in order to make their investment, suggesting potential urban sketch. The word transitory means temporary, which suggests that often the actions of the politicians are rash and irrational, and they do not have a lot of thinking done behind it. White vanishing air can be a reference to pollution that always comes with development and making the clean air vanish into oblivion. They are sketching transitory lines rigid as wooden borders, which means they are planning things which are sure to disappear. It depicts their efforts and how hopeless the task of trying to confine and contain creativity is. The last two lines are tracing the panic of suburb order in a bland madness of snows. The way they trace to mark out future investment always cause panic in the suburb as they are to be destroyed. The use of panic create a sense of pity for the suburban areas as they are painted as the fearful underdogs, which they are. There is a juxtaposition over here as well when panic and order are put in the same line. It exemplifies the fact that the suburban areas have its own form of order and the new order to them brings more chaos rather than the previous. There is an oxymoron over here as well when the words bland and madness are used together. The wave of blandness that is viewed as from the urban world can be madness to the people of the rural area. The word snows is grammatically incorrect. This incorrect use of the word snows illustrates a sense of rebellion over the whole concept of development. White vanishing air and snows are the indicators of the climate crisis and how impactful city planning can be on a green economy.